It is 5 o'clock somewhere, and you've tuned in to Season 4, Episode 5 of BRC. For those of you who'd like to watch this episode, I highly recommend it. You can view Season 4 on our website, YouTube, Spotify, WhiskeyNetwork.net, and Zencaster. I'm Kerry Moynahan, and in today's Club Corner segment, we're raising a glass to a global movement that's reshaped the whiskey landscape. My guests today include Women Who Whiskey founder Julia Ritz Toffoli and the Los Angeles chapter president, Kim Ohanneson. So kick off your shoes, pour yourself a dram, and join me for this episode of Barrel Room Chronicles. Like what you've seen on BRC? Want to see more? Experience more? And maybe even taste more? Then head over to our Ko-fi site and become a member of the Barrel Room Parlor. By choosing the copper level membership, you'll have exclusive access to videos related to topics discussed on the podcast and blog posts for members only. As an Amber member level, you'll enjoy everything from our copper level as well as various spin-off series including The Cutting Room Floor and Kindred Spirits. In addition, the Amber membership includes exclusive discounts to live in-person events. To join, visit www.barrelroomchronicles.com and click on Become a Member in the navigation bar. Or go straight to our Ko-fi site at ko-fi.com/BRC and click on the membership link. Once you've joined, you'll have access to everything your chosen level has to offer. You'll even be able to participate with the show by commenting on videos and other posts. Don't wait. Sign up today for exclusive content and event discounts in the Barrel Room Parlor. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, whatever time it is that you are catching the show today. Today on the show, we have the founder of Women Who Whiskey, as well as one of the chapter leads here in Los Angeles, Kim Ohanneson, and the founder, Julia Toffoli. So ladies, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Well, as we always start out on the show, I always ask about your whiskey journey. So I think I will start off with Julia, just because I don't know anything about your whiskey journey. And you also are the founder of Women Who Whiskey. So let's start off with you. Julia, give us a little background on your whiskey journey.
Yeah, happy to. Well, first of all, again, thank you for having me. It's great to be here with you and always great to see you, Kim. I would say my whiskey journey is probably not the one you would expect from someone who started a whiskey club. It wasn't something that was around in my home very much growing up. My parents are from France and Italy, so there was a lot of wine, but there was almost no whiskey ever. So I don't have that fond memory of sitting on my grandfather's lap while he sipped a scotch by the fireplace that so many people talk about. That is not the beginning of my whiskey journey. The beginning of my whiskey journey starts in Canada, actually. I went to undergrad in Montreal, and rye and ginger was a delicious and affordable drink that a young whippersnapper like me with not a lot of disposable income could afford at the bar, which I was legally allowed to go to at the age of 18. So I discovered whiskey through just, your 2-for-1 braille mixed drinks at the bar, and very quickly discovered that it was actually a spirit that I enjoyed, at least a lot more than the other rail liquors that were available, such as gin or vodka. And as I got a little older and a little more discerning, I started to look into different kinds of whiskey that were available in Canada and sort of started to build a taste for it. I didn't actually consider myself a whiskey drinker until I moved to Europe after school and had a hard time finding whiskey over there, at least beyond a couple of brands. I was in Rome 20 years ago. So it wasn't, there wasn't a lot of whiskey. You could find Jack Daniels at a bar or something like that. But the variety that I think I had become used to in Montreal wasn't available anymore. And so when I moved to New York, in 2010, it was like being a kid in a candy store. It was the sort of peak of the cocktail revival. The Prohibition era bar was just booming everywhere. Classic whiskey cocktails were on every single menu. And that is sort of when I got into drinking whiskey with a passion, I would say, rather than an intentionality. And that is also when I discovered that I was not the typical whiskey drinker. And I will stop there because that sort of starts to bleed into how we started Women Who Whiskey.
All right. Well, let's hear Kim's journey, and then we will get on to the organization's journey.
Well, interestingly, I didn't even realize, Julia, that you didn't come from a whiskey drinking family. I didn't either. I grew up on a farm, which I'm sure I've mentioned to both of you, and so it was mainly beer and wine. Uh, no, no whiskey to be even seen or discussed. And when I started drinking, interestingly, when I was in college, I was drinking um, Johnny Walker just because, just I don't even know how that happened. And then I kind of went into mixed drinks. But my whiskey journey really began when I became friends with a guy who is Scottish. Uh, Kind of didn't like to go out. So he would buy really, really good scotches and scotch whiskeys, single malts, and just invite me and my husband over. It was like a 1 block walk. And I, it was really kind of self education. I started another club called Whiskey and Poetry Salon, and kind of got to a point where okay, I've taken this as far as I can. And somebody mentioned Women Who Whiskey and said, first she said, "Oh, do you want to start a club?" And then, chapter together. And then she decided she didn't. I contacted Julia, and we just kind of launched off on the journey. And it's been so fabulous ever since.
Okay. Well, Julia, tell me, like, what year, first of all, did you start the organization, and what was the launching point for you? Like, what was the deciding factor saying, you know what, I'm going to make this club? And then did you think right away you were going to make it national, or was it supposed to be just like a little local thing?
Yeah, so great question. I like to say that if you had told me then that it would be what it is now, there's a very good chance I would have never started it, because the amount of growth that it's had, I think, has been really encouraging and wonderful, but is also would have seemed very daunting looking forward at it. Um, so right, picking up where I left off, I moved to New York in 2010 for graduate school, and I started visiting the city whiskey bars, all of the ones that I could find. And I was really excited to be in a space where I could be drinking Manhattans again and discovering all of the whiskeys behind the bar. And I quickly realized that not everybody felt as inclusive or expansive about who should be a whiskey drinker as I thought should be. And I got a lot of pushback, strangely, whether it was from bartenders who were, you know, surprised to see me there. And, you can't see this on the podcast, but I'm 5'2" on a good day. Um, I'm pretty petite. And at 25, at the age of 25, I looked pretty young. And so I think people were a little surprised to see this like tiny little thing show up at a bar and ordering these strong drinks. And so, I from men 99.9% of the time I would get comments like, "Oh, that's really strong, right?" Or "Are you sure you can handle that?" Or one guy said, "Wouldn't you rather see the wine list?" So that's just from bartenders. And then from other patrons, I would get comments like, "Oh, I didn't know women drank brown liquor," or like, "That's really sexy," or um, "Are you sure you even like that?" So anyway, after enough of that, I got really frustrated, and I started having conversations with friends of mine that I realized were having the same experience. And so I was new in school. I would, see somebody ordering an old fashioned and say, "Hey, I also like whiskey." It was a way to get to know people. Um, and really, as a joke, we said, we should start a thing where we're just women going around drinking whiskey and showing all these bartenders that we're whiskey drinkers too. And it really wasn't an official thing. I think, we did actually have a first official Women Who Whiskey outing. I think it was in March of 2020, 2011. Um, but at the time, it was really just kind of like a meetup amongst friends. We would say, okay, every month or so, we also were in grad school. We didn't have any money. So we had to be really discerning about where are we going to go? What are we going to spend our like hard earned like student loan dollars on? And so we would go out every, 4 to 6 weeks and pick a bar and go. And eventually we gave it a name, and eventually it just sort of started snowballing into a thing where friends would bring friends. And, this was a long time ago. It was at the very beginning sort of social media. I think we had a blog in the very early days of Instagram. And slowly people that I had never met started coming or being interested in coming.
So on those first couple of outings, how many ladies were there?
I think
Like
our very
two,
first
five,
outing, we
10?
had 7
Okay.
women. And I actually have a photo of it, so it is a treasured memory of mine. And then, yeah, we were usually around, I would say, from half a dozen to a dozen ladies going out for drinks. And it was very informal. We would just show up at a bar and have some drinks. We just gave ourselves a name and it got official. Um, Slowly we started there was a bar that is unfortunately closed called Ward 3 that would do these events called Whiskey Mondays, and they would have a brand ambassador come from a whiskey brand. And they did this also because Mondays are a notoriously slow night in the hospitality industry, and this is a way to get people in the door. So they would have a brand ambassador come in, do a free tasting of the thing. They would have a cocktail special with the drink. So we started going to these Whiskey Mondays, and that's how we started developing relationships with the brands individually. And so that's sort of how eventually we started doing events that were a little bit more educational, eventually sponsored. But early on, it was really just a meetup, and it was just in New York for a long time.
Okay, and then, as your New York chapter grew, what was the impetus to say, "Hey, let's make this national," or did somebody come to you and say, "Hey, can we make a chapter?" How did that all start?
Yeah, so again, it really wasn't anything that I came up with. The first chapter that we launched, I think, was in Portland, Oregon,
Oh,
because
wow.
a friend of mine who had been part of the New York chapter was moving back there. She was from Portland originally. And she was lamenting to me how sad she would be to leave the club behind. And as a joke, I said, "Well, why don't you just start a chapter over there?" And she did. So she started a chapter in Portland. So that's how we started the first one. I think our second chapter was in Nairobi for a very similar reason. My friend
Nairobi.
Kim moved to Nairobi. We went to public policy school, international development. So we had a lot of friends who moved to different countries. And we started a chapter in London and Geneva and in Nairobi. We had one in Toronto that is not operational anymore. But a lot of the early chapters started because New York members moved elsewhere and brought it with them. And then as our presence on social media grew, people like Kim heard about us in other cities and said, "Wow, I've always really wanted to start a whiskey club. Wouldn't it be great if I could do it under the umbrella of something that already existed and had sort of a chapter model?" So I started getting inbound requests from people in cities I'd never been to, from people I'd never met, to say, "Hey, I love what you're doing. Can I do it here?" And we grew pretty quickly. I think we had in the first 4 or 5 years, maybe 10 chapters. Um, and the first year and a half or 2, we were really just in New York, so that growth happened quite quickly.
Wow, okay, and so, Kim, what year was it that you reached out to Julia and said, "Hey, let me," because I remember I went to 7 Grand once, and it was I was doing something I don't know why I went, but you were having one of your, poetry salons, and I was like,
Mhm.
"What is this?" And Johnny DeScott was there, and you were there, and I was like, "Well, this is very interesting," but then after that, the next time I saw you, it was with Women of Whiskey, and I was like, "Wait, I thought she
Mhm.
did the poetry thing. Wait, what's going on?" So confused.
Confusing everybody. So, well, yeah, I mean, so Johnny the Scott Mundell, Johnny Mundell, I actually founded Whiskey and Poetry Salon with. So that's how I kind of made some of my, whiskey contacts. And, we just would go to things. And he was, do you know, I don't know if you know him, Julia, but he was for a long time, he was the brand ambassador for Beam Suntory, and he would be traveling back and forth to Japan. So anyway, that was one of the reasons actually that I thought, well, maybe we should branch out because it was too hard for him to kind of keep coming in. So I kind of felt like I needed to expand it. And I remember, so I'm trying to let me march my thoughts. It's been nine. It was a 9 year anniversary. I think our anniversary of both the club and the chapter are both in March. So and I just had my 9 year anniversary, and you're uh,
I think it's gonna be 10 years this year because I think we launched the LA chapter in 2015.
was it okay?
I
Hmm.
think so. I'll have to go back and check. It was
All
either
right. It's
2015 or 2016, but
Yes, it's either ninth or
yeah.
10th anniversary. So, and when I approached Julia, she, of course, very welcoming, and I put out a little press release, and it wasn't any. I mean, I think I just sent it to like, I don't know, just not infatuation because they didn't have that then, but and it kind of took off, and I think the town was really ready for it. Poor Julia was having, there's like, we got 2,000 members, I think, like in the first 2 weeks or something.
LA is still bigger than New York.
Wow.
I think, yeah, I think and poor Julia was like, I can't, but you were having to input everybody. There was no real anything set up. And you kept calling me or, emailing me and saying, I can't keep up with this. I can't keep up with this. So, there's obviously a lot of enthusiasm. It was just the time was right. And, as I mentioned, because of the Whiskey and Poetry Salon, I, kind of knew some, brand ambassadors, and I just kind of started calling people up. But it's interesting that you remember 7 Grand, which for those who are listening and not in LA, it's, one of the premier whiskey bars in, the city and maybe the state. So, but our very first chapter meeting was at 7 Grand with Brooke Lottie. So, and it was, and it was packed. It was packed. So it was great. And it kind of just went on from there.
2,000 members in like 5 minutes.
Yeah. Well, not 5 minutes.
It was weeks. It was in a matter of weeks. I mean, we have 2,000 members in New York now after 15 years almost. So,
and Nairobi is actually very large. I mean, I think at one point they were close to 3,000. Everything has kind of shifted a little bit since, the pandemic, the writer's strike here, the fires, it's just been one thing after another in Los Angeles. So people are a little more subdued, but anyway.
Yeah. But still, you still have members, and everyone still talks. And I still go as often as I can to as many events as we can.
And we've done events with you. So
yes, you have, which were fun.
And more, really I hope.
I hope so too. I've got another one coming up we need to discuss.
Okay, great.
Okay, so whiskey journeys. Okay, so overall, what is like the what is the mantra? What is the goal of Women Who Whiskey, and like what? Not the motto. What is there like a specific guideline of what the chapters are supposed to do in order to stay like within brand, or how does that work?
Well, yeah. So I guess we have our unofficial motto is sort of, whiskey without mansplaining. Because so many of our members, I think that's the thing that has united us, is just getting mansplained to so many times, and often wrongly. Like, mansplainers are not always correct. They're actually
mostly wrong. Mostly wrong.
Mostly wrong. And so that's sort of I think that's the quippy version. The longer version is really to create a space for people to explore a passion without fear of judgment, right? In a space of vulnerability, in a space of community, in a space where not knowing is just as fine as knowing, and in a way that's fun and sort of takes away a lot of the traditional stigmas or rules around something that's seen as very, narrow for a narrow group of people. And so, yeah, we really try to take a playful attitude first, a playful attitude that also is very communal and interactive and fun. We'll usually do something that involves food pairing. We almost always have a cocktail element, because the idea is like whiskey is not this pure thing that you have to like worship at the altar of. No ice, no nothing, no water. You put juice in it. Who cares? Like, it should be delicious. You should have it however you want. And so generally we try to work with brands who are, first of all, open to that. Second of all, who are willing to showcase their spirits in different and creative ways. If we can, we'll try to do events that focus around that. Well, every event has an educational component. Our members are so nerdy. We are nerdy as hell. So if you can do something that's like, we've done events on yeast, we've done events on, the ins and outs of specifics of like different types of grain in wood maturation. So, we're not just whiskey 101 people. We really want to get in the weeds. And so if there's an opportunity to do something that involves, hands-on experimentation. I remember we did an event here in New York with an Irish whiskey where we actually had the 3 different components, the pot still, the grain whiskey, and the single malt separate, and people were able to mix their own try to mix the three components to try to match the original blend. So
Very
that was
cool.
really fun. Anytime we can get, some chemistry equipment up in here, we will definitely take the opportunity. And so really, yeah, I think
Hopefully no Bunsen burners.
no,
Hopefully no
no,
Bunsen
no open flames. But yeah, I think, the it's really a space for nerds to be able to nerd out, for novices to be able to learn and to ask questions in a safe space with people who are passionate and are there to yes and not no but.
Oh, I like that. Yes, and not no but. I like that.
Yeah,
I mean, it's nice to have a butt.
yeah.
It looks nice,
A
but
sherry butt. We only want sherry butt.
sherry butt. Right. Okay. So how many chapters do you have now worldwide?
Ooh, that's a good question. It kind of comes and goes. Like Kim said, we at our peak we had between 25 and 30. I think I would say leading up to 2020. The pandemic was pretty rough. A lot of the cities that had, a staple set of brand ambassadors were able to stay alive, but a lot of the chapters that were in sort of smaller second tier markets just did not have the same amount of marketing budget available to them at the brand level, and so it was difficult to stay afloat. um, I think right now we probably have it kind of varies because we're not really launching a lot of new chapters right now because I don't want to get too much into the operational stuff, but we're trying to get our house in order before we start to scale even more. I like to use the analogy that, we were kind of like a log cabin where somebody built a lean-to and somebody added like an outhouse and then a second floor, but like we don't have central plumbing, we don't have a stairwell. We need to do
It's the
some like
Winchester Mystery House.
yes,
Yeah,
yes,
right.
exactly. We need to do some gut renovations before we can keep adding floors. So I've tried to hold back on scaling, although we do have a lot of requests in the wings. So that was a long-winded way of saying I think now we probably have about 15 like active chapters, and then another 5 or so that are sort of maybe meeting quarterly or something in a more informal way.
Okay. And then, so does that mean if somebody watching wanted to start a chapter, they'd have to wait in line, or is that something they can call you up and say, "Hey, we've got a lot of interest here. How do we start one?"
Yeah, so I'm hoping that soon we and I'm going to say this out loud. By day I'm a behavioral scientist, so I understand the power of saying a goal out loud and holding yourself accountable to it. I'm going to say that hopefully by the end of this year we'll have a system where scaling chapters will be sort of plug like click and go.
Plug
So
and
I
play, yeah.
think yeah, we do have an application. People can fill it out. And then you will be sort of waiting in the wings. And then when we're ready to scale, we hopefully won't have to go one by one waiting for people waiting in line and you have to wait your turn. We'll sort of reach out to everybody who's applied and said, are you still interested? If so, here's how we're going to sort of do the application process and get you set up and ready to go. But I'm waiting on a little bit more internal, sort of setting up operational systems, setting up, like we don't have a handbook yet, but Kim and all of her other chapter presidents were such good sports about sort of launching this totally blind and with just a bunch of emails back and forth. Now we'd like to be a little bit more systematic about growth.
Well,
Fantastic.
you were so supportive, Julia. I mean, really, I never felt like I was dangling in the wind or what is happening? So you were really, really supportive. And I think not long after me, there was a big rush of chapters, I think we've
Mhm.
discussed, so, and, I think also, as you say, Julia, there's been so many people who are wanting to do different kinds of chapters. Some people it seems like just want to get together and have cocktails, which is totally great, and some people, want to get more in the weeds. But so yeah, I
Yeah.
anyway, again, I felt totally supported by you. So
Well,
Oh,
Kim,
I'm
there's something
glad.
else I wanted to ask you. I know that you guys have had a collaboration with some other whiskeys in the past. I know that you've done bottle collaborations before, and now you have one coming up with Impex. What is this particular bottle, and how can people get a hold of it?
Well, actually, impacts we've had, over the years, and I think, New York chapter as well, but, very specifically LA chapter because Chris Udi, who, is the VP, I believe, or partner with Impex Beverages, which is an importing company, we've become good friends. he approached us about doing a collaboration with Fukano, Japanese whiskey. This is kind of the big thing that we did. And it was to celebrate Chizuru Fukano, who is like one of the first ladies of Japanese whiskey. And she was about to retire. And so Chris wanted to do a special bottle for her. And it was, it was kind of fraught because it was during the pandemic. If I'm remembering it, there's a couple of collaborations, and shipments were being delayed. Do you have that memory? And it was like, is it going to get here in time? And do we have to move it back? And Chris set up a international Zoom meeting with Chizuru, and people were crying. Remember that, Julia? I mean, I was crying, but I always cry when I get very emotional.
It was for our 10th anniversary, so it was
That's
supposed
right.
to be in 2021, but
Mhm.
because of the pandemic, like the shipping container, like
it was
delays, we ended up doing the event, I think, in February of 2022. I think when I was in
Was
LA.
it that long?
Yeah, it was almost a year after. And I was in LA. I came to Kim's house and we did the Zoom together from her.
I remember there was like a lot of light coming through, and you said, "I'm getting raptured." But Lynn Doe, who now works for Scotch Malt Whiskey Society, but she's an artist, and this is one of her paintings up here. I don't know if you can see it, but she designed a beautiful label for it. It was taken from a picture of Chizuru holding her child, but then Lynn put in like sheaves of wheat, and it was very, very beautiful. I was very honored to be able to. Chris said, "We need somebody to do the tasting notes right away." So I was like, "Okay," and then I tasted, and was very honored to do the tasting notes under duress. But so the big lead up is that, it sold out very quickly, right, Julia? I mean, there was, almost immediately there wasn't that many. It was 3,000 bottles, I think, total. And they just found in a warehouse somewhere in the Midwest, like a finite number of cases, but this is like discovering gold. I mean, it just hasn't even been, available for years now. So the organization, not Women Who Whiskey, but the warehouse or the organization where the whiskey was found, will ship it out anywhere in the United States. And it's also $30 off. So it was $90 and now it's $60. And Julia posted in her Women Who Whiskey, and as she said, it's the perfect way to celebrate upcoming anniversary of Women Who Whiskey, and it's also a great spring whiskey. I've found I've done tastings with people, and they're like, "This is spring in a bottle." So beautiful bottle, and and celebrating women. So it's
Do you know how many bottles are in that finite number of cases?
I want to say it's 9 cases of 6 bottles each. So,
okay.
Does that sound right, Julia?
Yeah, 9 cases. Yeah, I can never remember if a case is 6 or 12. I think it's 6.
I think these are 6.
6, huh?
Yeah.
It's somewhere between 50 and 100 bottles.
Yeah. So very, very limited.
So wow.
And it's an amazing price, and it's never going to, you'll never be able to get it again. So, very exciting.
That's very cool. It's like when people find, from the Prohibition era, when they find whiskey in walls and floors and old houses. Yeah. It's kind of, I love those stories.
I think
it's only been a couple years, but still, it's nice.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what happened. I mean, it just somehow got overlooked in a warehouse, or else it would already be gone. So
these are already labeled and everything. They were just original.
Oh yeah, it's just the original bottles that somehow, the warehouse got tucked away. And so, do you know if anybody has bought bottles in your chapter, Julia?
I don't know. I haven't talked to Chris. I think a couple, but we'll keep putting it in our newsletter.
And is it only going to be available through you guys, or are they selling it anywhere else?
It's just through Potomac Wines and Spirits, and it's on sale. The normal price was $99.99, and it's on sale for $69.99. So it's
$69. Thank you.
Yeah, it's $30 off, and it's now or never.
Yeah. Yeah, and they ship everywhere, so it wouldn't
$30
be
off.
through us. I mean, you could, I guess, if somebody wanted to get in touch with us, but we would just be directing them towards Potomac.
Oh, that label is gorgeous. I'm going to have to stick a picture of that up. Good
Yeah,
job, Lynn. Good job.
yeah, it's really beautiful.
I have a couple pieces of Lynn's artwork also. I have a distillery. I think it was Ardbeg. I can't remember. I'd have to go look at it. And then I also have something where she did like these Mickey Mouse characters that were also Star Wars characters. That's really cool too. She's very diverse with her artwork. I love it. And this is definitely a different style than I have seen her do before, but I love it.
Yeah, I went on a Lindo buying spree for a little while there, and then ran out of wall room. So
yeah. I still have to get. I think I have 3 of hers, and I still have to get them all framed because they deserve frames. So, I actually, fun story. When I went to Scotland, it's 10 years ago now. It was in 2015. I went on a trip, and her and Bino were both going to the Isla Festival. And when we were in Isla, we were coinciding at the same time. And I said, "Oh, we have to go to Ardbeg right now because my friends are there." And so everyone's like, "Oh, well, that wasn't on our list." I said, "I don't care. We have to go."
Let's go now.
So we went, and I got to hang out with Lynn for a little bit. And then I couldn't hang out with Bino because he was in the middle of making a big deal on some $3,000 bottle of something or other. And so he just, "Well, I have to talk to you later." I'm like, "Okay." So
yeah, he's a member of, I think, every whiskey club, in the state. So he's,
yeah. I found him up in San Francisco last year at Fog City Social. I'm sure he'll be there again this year. I'm going again this year. So if anybody wanted to get involved with the current chapters, is there a main Women Who Whiskey website that they can go to, or how would they know what cities are currently available? And then if they wanted to throw their hat in and say, "I'm ready to start a chapter," what would they do?
Great question. So we do have a website. It's womenwhowhiskey.club, CLUB. And you can find all the information on there. There's a join page, which links to all of the different chapters, and each chapter has its own sign up list. It's currently free to join Women Who Whiskey, and then most of the events and most chapters are ticketed. They are heavily subsidized compared to how much it would cost you to get the equivalent of what you get at an event. But so, yeah, the events are ticketed. You can go to the ones that you're available for. And like I said, each chapter kind of has its own cadence of events and style. And then on that page, I don't know exactly where it is on the website, but there is a way to apply to start a new chapter in your city. And there's also a sign up sheet where you can sign up for other cities, and we will let you know if a chapter launches in your city. So you can say, "I don't want to start one, but I want to know."
But I want to be in one.
Yeah,
Nice.
I want to be in one when it opens here. So you can sign up for that list, and we'll keep you posted.
Sounds good. All right, ladies.
People don't realize how much work it is to start a chapter.
It's a lot. And my hat's off to both of you ladies, because it's a lot of work.
That's a lot of fun.
It is a lot of fun.
I've gained so much from running this organization, and the whiskey's not even the top 10. So,
yeah. Wow, that's pretty good. Impressive.
Yeah.
Because I would say the whiskey's number 1.
No, the women. It's the women. I've met so many amazing women all over the world, and just made so many friendships. I've learned so much from so many people, and I mean, the whiskey's in the top 10, maybe not the top 5.
Okay, that's a little better. But getting to know all the women. I mean, that's fantastic. I love going. And my same experience when I first started drinking whiskey was, the bartender's like, "What are you talking about?" And then people look at me like, "That's a man's drink, right?" I'm like, or, "Hey, that's grandpa's drink, right?" And I'm like, "Hey, maybe you should check what's going on in the world today, because no, it's not." And I remember quite often in the beginning, I was the only girl in the room for many things. Whiskey related. So I love going to Kim's events because there's usually only one man in the room. And I'm like, now it's opposite. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's funny. We, we have, I mean, just so people know, I mean, I would like to, invite men in anyway, just because, we've talked about this, Julia, it's kind of different. When the club started, there was more of like, as you say, oh, it's a big drink for a little lady, kind of thing. Now there's a much more enlightened, attitude. But legally, we can't bar men we can't make it women only, or we could be sued. So,
Right.
because of stupid litigious guys. So anyway, but I think it adds to, I mean, as long as somebody doesn't mansplain or talk very loudly, well, but generally speaking, everybody is very polite. But it's very funny. My chapter, there's like, 2,000 something women and like 153 men. So that's kind of how it's reflected.
I didn't realize there was that many men. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. They don't all show up, so.
It was just David.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Well, and, inclusivity is sort of our part, or, founding ethos. So it does make sense to include anybody who wants to be involved. We in New York, we still sometimes do events that are, I would say, quote unquote, women only, because we are very inclusive. Like, if you consider yourself to be, fitting that description in any way, shape, or form, then this is open for you. So it's more about, if you identify as a gentleman, we would ask you to sit this one out, essentially, is how we phrase it. But we still do it's less and less year over year. But, I think one of the things I realized was, if we're only hanging out together, whose minds are we changing about who a whiskey drinker is?
True.
Part of, trying to shift the narrative around who whiskey is for and who drinks it is about normalizing it for people who might not normally have, a lot of exposure to women drinking whiskey, or women being experts about whiskey, which is also so important.
Right. Okay. Well, ladies, thank you so much for your time today. This has been fabulous. I finally get to know how this all started, because I've been wondering that for years now, and how Kim met you. And so I didn't know that she was told about the organization and then pursued it.
It was a cold call. So.
Hey, I'm in LA. You want me to start a chapter?
Yes, please.
Yay.
So,
well, thank you for having us, Kerry.
Yes.
Really appreciate it.
And for those out there on social media, what would be the handles that they can look for to find you guys besides your website?
Yeah, so the main Women Who Whiskey handle is just at Women Who Whiskey across all platforms. And we have a different one for Los Angeles and all the different chapters.
And, we're just basically Women Who Whiskey Los Angeles, at Women Who Whiskey Los Angeles. I think Facebook there might be a hyphen in there somewhere, but
we're pretty easy to find.
Yeah.
Great. All right, ladies. Well, thanks again for being on the show, and I look forward to more events.
Yay. Thank you.
Thank
you, Julia. Good to see you. Bye-bye.
Unleashed Coffee is a farm-to-cup adventure like no other. Step into a world where exceptional flavors, tantalizing aromas, and rich mouthfeel take you on a journey from your kitchen to the picturesque coffee plantations at origin. At Unleashed Coffee, we believe in fostering connections between coffee lovers and the hardworking farmers behind each bean. Join the journey through our coffee subscription program and gain access to our exclusive online community, connecting you to fellow enthusiasts and the producers of your morning brew. To help you extract every nuance of flavor from our beans, take part in our on-demand coffee brewing courses right in the comfort of your own home. If you are seeking B2B coffee solutions that go beyond just beans, our comprehensive wholesale packages cater to the diverse needs of mobile carts, farm stands, restaurants, cafes, retail shelves, and more. Look no further than Unleashed Coffee to quench your thirst for quality coffee. Use coupon code COFFEEBRC at the checkout to receive 10% off your first purchase at unleashedcoffee.com.
That does it for today's show. To read notes on this episode or learn more about our guests, please visit barrelroomchronicles.com. Want to interact with the show or have questions for our guests? Then ask them on our socials or send us an email. Or better yet, leave us a voicemail on our website. If you like what you heard, please rate and subscribe to the podcast. If you really liked it and you want to show your support, buy us a whiskey through our Ko-fi site at ko-fi.com/BRC, or become an exclusive member of the Barrel Room Parlor. If you work in the whiskey or spirits industry, or just have a deep passion for whiskey and want to share your spirits journey, register to be a guest through our website. Last but not least, please enjoy your spirits responsibly. Thanks for joining me. Until next time, Solanjava.
Barrel Room Chronicles is a production of First Reel Entertainment and is available on Spotify, Apple, iHeartRadio, Amazon, YouTube, or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts.